I'm not a lawyer, but Sean Diddy Combs has just been sentenced to 50 months in prison, which equals to 4 years and 2 months.
In just a few seconds, everything changed. The courtroom fell silent, and a judge looked straight at Sean Diddy Combs, not as a music mogul, but as a man stripped of power. What came next left everyone in shock. Today, we're breaking down the powerful moment that turned fame into a lesson in accountability, and why even Diddy couldn't escape justice. On October 3, 2025, Diddy stepped into a federal courtroom, a moment that would determine the course of his entire future. But as the proceedings unfolded, things took a turn he never could have prepared for.
Of 10 years in prison. So 2 counts means he was looking at a maximum of 20 years in prison. Max sentences are typically reserved for the very worst kind of criminals, and so in this case, neither the prosecutors nor the defense were arguing that he should be sentenced to 20 years. Prosecutors were instead arguing that Diddy should be sentenced to no less than 135 months, which amounts to 11 years and 3 months. And they say that's based on some enhancements for his sentence.
Unfortunately for Diddy, the court ultimately decided on a 50-month sentence. Before that verdict was handed down, he took a moment to speak directly to the audience, addressing the situation in his own words. Prosecutors argued that the victims in the case were vulnerable, which, under federal guidelines, would significantly increase his sentence, pushing it to no less than 11 years and 3 months. The defense, however, firmly disagreed, stating that those enhancements didn't apply to Diddy's case and recommended a much lighter sentence of no more than 14 months. Since Diddy had already been in custody since September 2024, his attorneys argued that he had served over a year, meaning he could potentially be released by December. Alongside these arguments, the U.S. Probation Office also provided its own recommendation through a pre-sentence report, PSR, a standard procedure before sentencing. When it was finally time for the judge to speak, he began by acknowledging Diddy's achievements and challenges, recognizing him as a self-made man, a father, and someone who had battled addiction. But after a brief pause, the tone shifted. The judge made it clear that what had taken place extended far beyond fame, drugs, or wild parties, signaling that the court viewed the matter as something far more serious. The judge didn't hold back. His tone was steady, his words carefully chosen, and his eyes locked on Diddy with a piercing intensity that filled the room with tension. "You abused the power and control you held over women who loved you," he declared, his voice carrying the weight of justice rather than emotion. This was not a moment for comfort or leniency, it was a reckoning. From the very first sentence, it was clear that this would not be an ordinary exchange between judge and defendant. It was a confrontation with truth, one that would strip away any remaining illusion of untouchability surrounding the once celebrated mogul. The courtroom, which had moments earlier buzzed with whispers, fell completely silent. Everyone knew they were witnessing a pivotal moment, one that would be remembered long after the gavel fell. The judge spoke with deliberate clarity, his tone neither cruel nor compassionate, but firm, as though each word had been weighed before it was spoken. "I listened to Cass's testimony," he continued. "I saw the messages, the photos, the bruises. I know that 2 women even contemplated taking their own lives because of you." The air grew heavier with every sentence. No one dared to move. The words were not merely a statement, they were an indictment of character, of power misused, of humanity lost in pursuit of control. Each word landed with the impact of a gavel strike, echoing through the courtroom and into the hearts of those who heard it. The judge wasn't just reading from a prepared statement, he was delivering a verdict that transcended the legal realm. It was moral, emotional, and deeply human. The evidence, laid bare for all to see, had painted a picture of pain and manipulation no fame or fortune could disguise. For years, Diddy had been seen as larger than life, a figure of influence, charisma, and cultural dominance. But now, sitting before the court, stripped of his entourage, stripped of applause, stripped of control, he was simply a man facing the weight of his own actions. The judge's delivery carried not only authority but also purpose. He wanted the courtroom to understand that this was not just about one man's crimes, it was about accountability. It was about the consequences that come when influence turns into exploitation, when admiration is weaponized against those most vulnerable. His gaze remained fixed on Diddy, not with hatred, but with the solemn responsibility of a man tasked with delivering justice. For the first time, it seemed that Diddy, a man once shielded by fame and fortune, could no longer hide behind them. The layers of celebrity and confidence had fallen away, revealing something far more fragile. A man confronted by the truth of what he had done. The silence that followed was almost unbearable. It wasn't just the end of a courtroom speech, it was the unraveling of a legacy. The judge's words didn't just fill the room. They pierced through it, serving as a reminder that even the most powerful among us cannot escape the reach of justice. In that moment, the courtroom stood as a symbol of something greater. The idea that no amount of success, wealth, or cultural influence can erase the harm inflicted upon others. Diddy's name, once synonymous with success and power, now carried the weight of disgrace and regret. And as the judge continued to speak, each sentence seemed to strip away another layer of that once golden image, leaving behind only the harsh reality of the man beneath. The judge's tone grew heavier as he spoke, his voice carrying both authority and disappointment. He described the offenses as deeply serious, not just morally wrong, but emotionally and psychologically devastating. "You caused irreparable harm," he said, emphasizing that the damage inflicted on the victims could never be undone, no matter how many apologies or settlements might come later. These weren't simply bad choices or isolated incidents. They were patterns of manipulation, cruelty, and control carried out over time. The judge's words served not only as a legal judgment but also as a moral reckoning, a public acknowledgement of the suffering that had been ignored for far too long. As he continued, the judge addressed one of the defense's central arguments, that Diddy's actions were being exaggerated or misunderstood within the context of consensual encounters. He was clear in rejecting that narrative. "This wasn't just about prostitution," he said firmly. "You weren't a client. You were the one in control." With that, he dismantled the attempt to minimize the crimes, exposing the truth that what had occurred wasn't transactional, it was exploitative. The imbalance of power, he explained, was what made these acts particularly disturbing. Diddy hadn't been engaging as an equal participant. He had been orchestrating, manipulating, and dominating vulnerable individuals who trusted him. The judge paused, allowing the gravity of his words to settle. The courtroom remained still. No one dared to move. He went on to explain that fame and fortune often create a dangerous illusion, that success can shield someone from accountability. But, he reminded everyone, justice does not bow to celebrity. "You used your influence not to uplift, but to exploit," he said. "You built an empire on image and ambition, but behind that image, there was pain, real pain, endured by the women who believed in you." The judge's message extended beyond the defendant sitting before him. It was directed at a broader culture that too often excuses or overlooks abuse when committed by powerful men. He spoke about the responsibility that comes with influence, how individuals in positions of visibility must recognize the impact of their actions. "People looked up to you," the judge said. "You had the power to inspire, to open doors, to lead by example. But instead, you used that power for control. You turned admiration into manipulation and love into fear." His words revealed the deep betrayal at the heart of the case. The trust of those closest to Diddy had been weaponized against them. As the judge detailed the emotional and psychological toll of Diddy's behavior, he referenced Cass's bravery in coming forward, calling it an act of strength that had given other victims the courage to speak. "The courage of these women should be commended," he stated. "It takes immense strength to stand up to someone as powerful as you, to look you in the eye and speak truth to power." The courtroom, filled with reporters, attorneys, and onlookers, listened intently as the judge's words painted a stark picture of abuse cloaked in glamour and fame. He then addressed the idea that remorse could somehow mitigate the crimes. "Regret after exposure is not the same as genuine remorse," he said. "True accountability means recognizing the harm before the world forces you to." In that moment, the courtroom saw not just a sentencing, but a symbolic stripping away of the untouchable image Diddy had built over decades. The judge made it clear that neither money, nor status, nor celebrity could erase the suffering that had been inflicted or the justice that was due. His tone softened slightly, but only to underline a broader point. This case is a reminder that power, when abused, will always meet its reckoning. No one, no matter how famous, stands above the law. He acknowledged that while the sentence could never heal the wounds inflicted, it was at least a step toward recognition, a statement that the system saw and believed the victims. As the judge's remarks came to a close, there was a palpable sense of finality. What once might have been dismissed as rumor or tabloid scandal had now been validated by the highest authority in the room. Diddy sat silently, his once confident posture replaced by a heavy stillness. The reality of his actions, and their consequences, had finally caught up with him. The judge's words, though directed at one man, carried a universal message. Power without accountability becomes poison. And when it's used to harm those who trust you, no amount of success can cleanse that stain. The judge acknowledged that many people had come forward to testify on Diddy's behalf, describing him as a changed man. But he quickly reminded the courtroom of incidents that took place even after Cass's lawsuit, including the infamous hotel attack video. "You didn't seem remorseful then," the judge said. "Do you remember when you mocked her during the assault and said, 'Is this coercion?'" He paused before delivering a final message. "I want to make it clear, to victims and to abusers, that accountability will always come." With that, the judge formally sentenced Diddy to 50 months in prison. As tears streamed down Diddy's face, supporters tried to highlight his charitable work, his influence in the community, and his legacy as an activist. But the reality of the moment hung heavy. In the end, it served as a sobering reminder. No matter how powerful or influential a man may be, he is never above the consequences of his actions. The speaker then shifted from talking about Diddy to delivering a heartfelt message, one that felt more like a reality check than a rant. He admitted that the street life, prison food, and the constant threat of violence were never for him. "I knew that life wasn't built for me," he said. "That's why I stayed in school, went to church, and kept myself out of trouble. I knew I wasn't made for that kind of world." He emphasized that he deliberately avoided the path that could lead him behind bars because he understood what was at stake: his freedom, his peace, his entire future. Turning to his audience, he challenged those who try to act tough or live recklessly. "Why pretend you're built for something you're not?" he asked. "Because when the consequences come, when those football numbers get handed down, suddenly everyone wants to cry. But where was that emotion when you were out there making those choices?" He reminded listeners that true accountability means standing on your actions, not breaking down when reality hits. "If you did it, own it," he said. "Don't put on a show in front of the judge about feeding the children or doing charity. You should have that before." His words carried a message beyond Diddy's case, a call for self-awareness, accountability, and understanding that every decision comes with consequences. The speaker's tone grew sharper as he continued, urging people to stop pretending and start being honest, especially those trying to maintain an image. "Stop putting on a show," he said. "If you were out there hiring people, doing things you knew were wrong, just own it. Don't fake remorse. You're not sorry, you're just sorry you got caught." He then turned his message toward young black men, reminding them that chasing a false sense of power or invincibility only leads to destruction. "Some of y'all think you can't be touched," he warned. "But once reality hits, once you're behind bars, suddenly you want sympathy. Nobody feels sorry for a man who had everything, built an empire, and still chose to abuse his power. The world won't pity you. People don't care, they are not listening." Echoing lessons from his own upbringing, he repeated his mother's advice: "If you want to stay out of jail, do the right thing." He urged others to drop the tough guy act, reminding them that trying to live like a gangster doesn't end well, no matter your age or status. "You don't own America," he said. "Acting reckless only brings you down." He closed on a reflective note, pointing to his own path as an example. "My mom told me to stay in the books, and that's exactly what I did," he said. "Now I'm living my life, traveling, singing, free. I never tried to be a gangster because I knew that wasn't for me. I don't know jail, I'm not built for jail, and I don't have a plan to go there." His message was simple but powerful. Understand who you are, make better choices, and stop confusing recklessness with strength. The speaker wrapped up his message with a mix of tough love and hard truth. He made it clear that staying out of trouble is the real mark of strength, not pretending to be untouchable. "I don't even think about jail," he said. "That's not a place for me. I'm focused on doing the right thing and keeping myself out of mess." Turning back to Diddy, he added bluntly, "Do your 50 months, man. You were out here playing games, and now you've got to face it. That's on you." From there, his message shifted into something broader, a warning to other men. "You don't want to be locked up. You don't want to be behind bars," he said. "So stop committing crimes. Stay out of that life before it ruins you." Then, he addressed a topic too often ignored: violence against women. "If your woman isn't listening to you or doing what you want, that doesn't give you the right to put your hands on her," he emphasized. "If she's not what you need, leave her. Walk away. Because no woman respects a man who hits her." He reminded listeners that every decision carries weight, that every choice, no matter how small it may seem in the moment, can shape the entire direction of one's life. "You'll end up like Diddy," he warned, crying, begging for forgiveness, and realizing too late that your actions destroyed everything. His words cut deep because they reflected a truth many refuse to face. Power and privilege don't erase accountability. No matter how successful, wealthy, or influential someone becomes, the consequences of reckless behavior eventually catch up. He pointed out that Diddy's downfall wasn't just about fame or fortune, it was about the illusion of invincibility. For years, many men in positions of power believed they were above the law, protected by money, status, or influence. But this case served as a stark reminder that those shields don't last forever. When you cross the line, the system will humble you, he said. It doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or a man just trying to make it. When the truth comes out, everyone bleeds the same. The speaker specifically turned his attention to black men, urging them to move smarter, live wiser, and understand the environment they are navigating. When you're dealing with non-black women, he cautioned, you have to recognize how the system views you. You don't get the same leniency. You don't get the same sympathy. One wrong move, one bad decision, and the world will flip the narrative against you. His point wasn't to divide, it was to awaken awareness. He wanted men to see that perception, power, and responsibility are all intertwined, and when misused, they can destroy everything a person has built. He reminded them that in today's world, appearances are deceiving. The same public that cheers you on when you're winning will turn their backs the moment you fall. No amount of money can protect you if you cross that line, he repeated. The judges don't care how rich or famous you are. The law doesn't care how many records you sold or how many lives you inspired. What matters are your actions. The message was clear: don't mistake temporary success for permanent security. As he continued, his tone grew more reflective. He spoke about the importance of self-control, the discipline it takes to rise above temptation, and the courage to walk away from situations that could destroy your future. Being a man isn't about dominance or control, he said. It's about responsibility. It's about knowing when to stop, when to say no, when to protect your peace rather than your pride. He called out the dangerous mindset that equates aggression with strength, explaining that true power lies in restraint, in the ability to choose growth over impulse. He emphasized that ego has been the downfall of countless men. Too many of us let pride drag us into destruction, he said. You think you're proving something, but really you're losing everything. He reminded listeners that real wisdom comes from humility, from understanding that you're not above the consequences of your actions. If you want peace, act right, he declared. Stay focused, stay smart, and don't let your ego drag you down. The message resonated because it wasn't just about Diddy, it was about every man who has ever stood at a crossroads between power and purpose, impulse and integrity. The speaker wanted his audience to reflect on their own lives, to recognize that every reckless decision creates ripples that reach further than they realize. Look at what happened to Diddy, he said. He had everything: success, money, legacy. And still, he lost it all because he couldn't control himself. As he neared the end of his message, he spoke with a tone that mixed disappointment with hope. It's never too late to change, he added. But you have to want it before the world forces it on you. Don't wait until the judge, the cameras, or the headlines humble you. Humble yourself now. In a world that glorifies fame and indulgence, his words stood out as a rare dose of truth, a reminder that manhood is measured not by wealth or reputation, but by character. Be real, he said. Stop acting like you're built for chaos when you were made for something greater. You can't heal what you keep hiding. You can't grow while pretending to be invincible. And with that, he closed his message, a raw, unfiltered reflection filled with wisdom, warning, and wake-up calls. It wasn't just commentary, it was a mirror held up to a culture that often mistakes power for purpose. As he signed off, the celebrity junk reminded viewers once again that every choice echoes, and those who fail to listen will eventually hear their mistakes shouted back at them.